Are you ready? Let's go!
Don't you sometimes just want to talk about everything? You know, there's days when you can just talk about anything. Need to sit back and chat about nothing at all? Nothing But Julie, coming at you with fun and creative topics and interviews.
Did you hear Julie's podcast? She's got the greatest topics.
Come join the chat about everything, anything, and nothing. So unwind and tune in to Nothing But Julie. Great topics and cool interviews with some pretty awesome people. And now, without further delay, here's Nothing But Julie.
Well, hello, everybody. It is Julie Schrager, your host of Nothing But Julie podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday hump day. Hope that you are all getting over the middle of the week hump. I am definitely working on it. Looking forward to the end of the week. Memorial Day is getting closer, and yay! So, if you are like me, well, we're all relatively the same in this arena. Have you ever heard of the term clickbait? Now, I've heard of it. I've heard of it several times throughout the past, I would say 2 years lately. Let me give you a definition of what clickbait is. It refers to the practice of basically writing some kind of sensationalized type of a headline, or even something that's misleading, a misleading headline in order to attract someone to click on that particular link and read that particular article. And the majority of the time, clickbait is an over-exaggeration of a particular thing that the author is trying to construe. And they basically bait you into clicking by writing the sensationalized and often embellished headline. And why do they do it? Well, because it encourages more traffic on their website. It makes them more popular. I have definitely been a victim of it and didn't even know what the term was until a few years ago. I didn't even know that there was a term. So this has happened to me, as I'm sure has happened to you, when you're on your phone, on your smartphone, and maybe you have certain notifications that are set up, and you get a news notification about whatever it might be, and you read what the headline is, and of course you're like, oh my God, I'm interested, let me click on it. And then you start reading, and it's like, wait a minute, this really does not have anything to do with the headline. They literally led you into clicking. Clickbait. Sometimes you might get an email notification that might have a certain headline that might draw your eyes towards wanting to see more about it. Clickbait. What about maybe social media? Sometimes you might be on a certain social media platform and you read something and it's this sensationalized headline that pulls you in and you're like, wait a minute, what? And then you click on it. That's why, lately there have been, these kind of erroneous headlines of, let's say, celebrities who have passed away, but they haven't passed away. And it's just an avenue for, these particular writers to get you to click and make their website more popular. So what are some examples of clickbait? Well, you can see something that maybe says, you'll never believe this, ... Or, who would have thunk this would have happened? Or, this woman lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks just by eating this or taking this pill, right? I mean, we've all seen it, and we've all kind of been, I would say, a victim of clickbait. So what are some things that you might have encountered that were clickbait? Well, for me especially during COVID, it kind of lured me in. Like, I was so bored, I would have clicked on anything that looked half as interesting, aside from, the politics that we were dealing with in COVID. But what is it about clickbait that works? I mean, obviously, it's not a great mystery, but it works because it appeals to your brain, a certain part of your brain, and it kind of it confronts, for lack of a better word, your desire for wanting, for being curious. And sometimes you're like, I don't care. But then you keep hearing about it and hearing about it, so you decide to click on it. And we're all curious beings. But if you are curious, besides, wanting to know why, let me continue telling you. I mean, this is the thing about clickbait. The headlines, okay, that perform the best happen to be ones that are somewhat that have a cause, okay. And so, what does that exactly means? Okay, it means that there could be a positive and a negative headline, and they can pull you in no matter what. It's kind of like I was saying earlier, a hyperbole or an exaggeration. But that is not all. They kind of give you what they would consider like a cliffhanger, or something that can really reel you in through curiosity. Because look, that is an innate human nature type thing that we all kind of suffer from. We like these kind of so-called cliffhangers. Have to stop for a drink. So what is it about these cliffhangers? I mean, look, we're all hardwired for this stuff. If anybody listening loves to read, you all know that you just can't put a good book down. If you love dramas or series, especially with the advent of Hulu and Netflix and Peacock and Prime Video. I mean, there are so many series, and they lure us into the point where we can't stop watching. We're all curious beings. So there's kind of like a very simple recipe that a lot of these clickbaiters do, which is more of like a how-to headline, a very simple promise, a very simple solution that kind of takes your mind off of all the other things that might be going on in your life. And let me give you some examples. Okay, so I'm getting this from a website, an e-commerce, which is simplified. And they say, well, it's more like a shirt that they have, and it's about product fulfillment, something I actually used to do or dabble in. And they might have a certain type of clickbait saying something like, you never knew how popular these items were, or how did you live your life without these products? Click to see the top 10 products you can't live without. So there's definitely ways that companies really manage to pull people in. And it does not cease to amaze me with certain headlines that you can't help but click on. But there are some that can make you cringe. Like, there was this one headline I remember reading that I was like, oh, come on. I'm not going to click on that, please. But we all have FOMO, which is fear of missing out. And social media, wow, they really have a way of creating fear of missing out and constantly throwing, BS down your throat to try. And there are people that will go on, let's say, Facebook and pay for advertising. And they will put that clickbait headline on there to lure you in. And sometimes they do. The question is clickbait marketing something that should be done or shouldn't be done? It's almost like impulse buying, where they put inexpensive items at the register just to get you to buy them on impulse. Oh, it looks interesting. I'll try it, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And clickbait gets views. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. When you click on, I keep saying click, but when you click on clickbait, it like I said earlier, it helps with the traffic of that website. It makes it more popular, and more people are going to want to keep going to that website. And it's a pretty useful tool. It's just part of the day old marketing, like I was saying, impulse buying, just at a more digital kind of format now because everything is so digital and online. And it's such a useful tool. It's not going anywhere. It gets viewers, to, let's say, my blog. Maybe I wanted to start a clickbait advertisement that can lure you into my blog. Hey, it might work, but that's part of the game. They're like not completely true headlines. They're somewhat true, but not 100%. And it's just become such a huge part of media that every media outlet wants to be the first outlet to get the news to you. So they embellish the truth to get you to go to their station, or to click rather on their headline to add more traffic to their website, or even to their app to make it more popular. Clickbait really makes you stand out as well. But there are some unpopular or cons, unpopular reasons or cons, not to do clickbait. And I have learned to recognize certain titles that I would construe as clickbait and no longer click on them because I'm skeptical now. And sometimes there are very obvious titles or like almost overly exaggerated that no one is going to click on. I wouldn't. And I think that what happens is there comes a point in time where people just become like overly exposed or overexposed to these particular titles, and we're just fed up with it. We don't want to play that game. I'm one of them. I have overcome that obstacle. But like I said, there was a time when I was just so bored with COVID that I would have clicked on anything like, oh, what's this? What's this? But it really skews people's, I'd say, expectations. You've got to be very careful when you're an advertiser of clickbait because you can over promise things in a lot of different ways. Like this is the best way to fly, or this is the cheapest hotel, or this is the craziest news. Click here. There's a difference between pulling in someone to read the article versus something you just, can't get away with. Excuse me. Let me tell you about some bad clickbait headlines or examples. So there was this particular, it was more like Bruno Mars about him being gay. And it was just like, but he's not. The rumor is just that, a rumor. But the clickbait headline was the rumor come out. Is Bruno Mars gay? And the way that they put it, it's like, wait a minute, what? No. And then you wind up clicking on it. Of course he's not, but you wind up clicking on it. But what are some things that might actually work? Well, I think that the ones that will work are not overly exaggerated titles. Like the 3 simple steps to shed belly fat. That to me is very straightforward. And if there's some truth to it, then okay, by all means, yay, great, straightforward to the point. But when you have those overly exaggerated advertisements, it's like, come on. You get to a point where it's like, I'm not an idiot. I know exactly what you're trying to do. And I was, shame on me. What was it? Wait, shame on me twice, shame on me. Oh my God. I feel like George W. Bush. I can't think of the right way. Wait, fool me once, shame on me. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Okay. That's kind of how clickbait is, you know? At first, they were like shocking and like, wait, what? All right, like there was this headline that said that man tries to hug a wild lion. You won't believe what happens next! Exclamation point. So, if this was true, the lion would have just torn the man to pieces, right? A wild lion. That was the only possibility, but this particular clickbait doesn't work like that. It actually makes you want to read the story. You know, you got this part one that man tries to hug a wild lion, and then you're like, wait a minute, what? Why would he do that? Okay, curiosity. Remember, I spoke about that before. Now you're curious. You want to click on it. Or you won't believe what happened next. And then you're like, again, curiosity. Wait, what happened? I need to find out. Telling you. Okay, stars who ruined their face due to plastic surgery. Talk about regrets. Yes, I would definitely click on that because I'm an idiot. But what it turns out to be is just like nothing. It's really not a lot of crazy stories. It might be like 10 stories where one had too much plastic surgery and it didn't look right. You know, there was another one about challenging your IQ. I have been fooled by this clickbait. I hate to say more than one time, but it's like they you know those examples that might be on Facebook where it's like, here's a challenge. What's 1 plus 2 plus 3? And you're like, really? But then you have to click on it because you're like, wait a minute, what am I what am I missing? Can you solve this riddle? 90% gave the wrong answer. If you get it right, you have a high IQ. Well, of course I'm going to click on it. Click bait. Only the people with an IQ of 160 can solve these questions. Are you one? I mean, such clickbait. And yes, of course, I will still click on it. Okay, you won't be able to resist, or men won't be able to resist you if you apply this simple trick. Wait, what is it? And then there are certain clickbait headlines where they try to induce fear. You know, like, is your man cheating on you? He is, if he does these 5 things. Dun, 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 dun. So now they're instilling fear into making you click on that headline. And what are the 5 things? Oh, he doesn't have time for you. He gets irritated. He avoids your calls. He goes to the phone. He uses his phone too much. He goes on too many trips. But the thing is each one of these is on a separate page. So you have to keep clicking after click after click. More clickbait. You know, and the list goes on and on and on. Like, 20 things that no one knew about this particular celebrity. And number 5 will blow your mind. Click. It just keeps happening. So what can you do to not click on these things? I mean, how can you avoid it? How do you know when it's such a good headline that it should be avoided? You know, how do you look at something and say, okay, this can't be true? But then what happens if it winds up being true? See, that's happened with me too. Where I'm like, okay, I'm disinterested. I'm not clicking on any of this crap anymore. But then it turns out to be something that really is very knowledgeable. I wish that I had clicked on. All right, so let's dive in. All right, let's talk about how you can avoid it. Well, because you're a sensible person, right? You're going to realize that it's not a very good idea. And if you are, let's say, a business owner, it can actually be really serious if you keep using clickbait regularly. It can destroy your credibility. So you're clicking, let's say you create clickbait from time to time. You do, right? But you have these embellished yet alluring headlines, but you don't have any content. Well, guess what? Your audience is not going to click on it anymore. They're not even going to be interested in anything that your company does. And you'll start seeing that you become very unpopular if you make a habit of purposely coming up with these hyped up headlines. It will make your reputation suffer. And for what? it's going to wind up hurting your social media reach because from I remember, maybe it was last year that Facebook started to take some serious action against certain websites that would post clickbait headlines like on the regular, and they would use, there's something called algorithms. So using their algorithms, they at Facebook were able to find out these sites that were consistently utilizing clickbait. And then what did they do, Facebook? Well, they reduced their visibility in other people's news feeds because they realized that it just was not, it was not that what they were doing was not right. And since then, Facebook figured out how to reduce the reach of certain clickbaits or clickbait headlines, meaning that they now know who these people are and they can penalize them. And that's going to be the end of them. And it can hurt their social media outreach. And what else can it do? Oh, a number of things, but mainly it could really ruin the reputation of a business. So let's discuss the main thing here. How can you avoid clickbait? What's the best way? Just don't click on it. How can you avoid creating it? Not so much clicking on it, but creating it as a business owner. Well, don't use any exaggerated titles, anything that's hyped up or crazy or over the top. Certain words that you shouldn't use, like guaranteed in your headline, which is basically making a promise that might not be able to be kept. Unless you're 100% sure you can guarantee, a particular result, don't use that word. And you should not use headlines that leave out a key piece of information. I mean, this is like what I said before about, hey, this is the number one secret to take off 15 pounds in 1 week. So when it comes down to it, just do not force your readers to click on your headline to get a critical piece of information. It's not worth it because they're just going to stop creating traffic on your website and you are going to become very unpopular. And you don't want your visitors to constantly be disappointed. They're just going to give up and leave and they're not going to visit your website anymore. It's a big negative. Use a title that's really descriptive and can convey, what, let's say, your blog is about. I think it's really important that you don't embellish, you don't overhype the headlines. So what is a headline that you could maybe create that will give you a ton of traffic? Well, there's one thing that is probably the best thing you can do. You need to make your title, your headline, descriptive. Like how-to titles are great for getting clicks. Like how to get your first 500 followers. Also, things like what's the best way, to get more traffic on your website. I'm just trying to think of something like the secret to getting more clients with less time or that's less time consuming. And you can also put your own spin on, a popular title. You can go to like a popular site and look for what types of titles they're using, like BuzzFeed. Look at their titles. Don't steal their headlines, but scroll through their posts and take a look at some of the words and the phrases or the formats and utilize that to make your own headline. And there's even a headline generator. Well, there's a few headline generators where you can just put in a few words and it'll create the headline. It will, I think it kind of asks, what is your headline really about? And you can put in like 3 or 4 or 5 words and then boom, it creates a bunch of headlines for you. I think there's one that's called HubSpot. Yeah, like a HubSpot generator. Or even like a headline analyzer. But this is what's fun. I know you know what an adjective is. you can add a bunch of adjectives to your title. It's a really, really great strategy. And it can just take a boring title and it can turn it into something that's really popular, like outrageous or mind blowing, like 10 mind blowing ways to lose weight fast, or little known ways to boost your work environment, or amazing tools every woman should have in their home office, things like that. And then you can just keep testing it. There's a way for you to actually test your headlines to see if they're going to create some traffic. You can share the post several times, and each time you can have a different title, and then you can see kind of how much traffic you'll get. Like, you can see, like, it'll say how many views, and then you use the one that becomes the most popular. There's a plugin that's called Thrive's Headline Optimizer, which will show you different headlines for different website visitors. And then the plugin basically chooses the highest performing one. So that is a way for you to see which title or which headline got the most clicks. So basically, clickbait headlines can negatively impact a business, a website, a person, and make them extremely unpopular. And if you create clickbait headlines that are tempting, people are going to see it's not worth it because it's just a short-term thing, and it might make you regret it. So create descriptive, adjective filled headlines that are truthful. So when you have people click on it, they're going to say, oh, wow, this was really cool. And they actually read what the headline was about. Anyway, that's my take on clickbait. It's very interesting in today's society how media has just become media has just become such a huge influence on people, to the point where it can poison our brains and lure us into doing things that we don't realize we're doing until we're like, okay, this is really stupid and I'm not wasting my time anymore. And that's basically clickbait. Don't click on things that seem too good to be true. Happy Wednesday.